much. This meeting is being recorded. It's Wednesday, 17 June 2026, 6:31 p.m. We're meeting remotely. We have a quorum. First item is public comment. If there's an item that is not on the agenda that you would like to comment on, please use the raise hand function, and I would be delighted to hear from you. We all would be. If not, please know there will be individual comment periods on almost every individual item. And if I forget, you all can just remind me, please. Okay, not seeing any hands jump up. Okay, we'll close the public comment period. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of items that an approval of the entire consent agenda is an approval of all of them. First one is the approval of the May 13th minutes. There's also a request to install a no parking opposite driveway for 89 Stedman Street. Renewal of a Jitney license for Flixbus. Renewal of 2 valet licenses for Hilton Garden and Longwood Towers. Renewal of 1 livery license for Champagne of Rides. And 1 renewal of a taxi dispatch license for Modern Rides Incorporated. Does any member wish to have an individual item removed and discussed separately? Len, I saw your hand go up first.
Can we discuss Stedman Street separately, please?
Yes. And Nancy, which one would you like removed?
Sorry, I was on the same.
Stedman
Same.
Street?
Yeah.
Okay. Rob, why don't you bring up Stedman Street if you have something on it?
I do. So would you like me to present the justification for why we would like to do this?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, let me fit this in here. So 89 Stedman sent us a request that they are having difficulty getting into their driveway. And they requested, and this is the driveway right here, they requested that parking be eliminated opposite the driveway to facilitate their entry and exit into the driveway. We felt that this was a no-cost change to make, given that this curb opposite 89 7th Street is 30 feet in length, and thus should really only accommodate a single parked vehicle. So putting a no parking anytime about 10 feet from opposite the driveway in the direction pointed here was felt that there would be no loss in parking, and it would help the entry and exit of this resident who uses this driveway. Certainly, I will say that we have received many comments opposing this, saying that one, that you can fit 2 cars that are on that curb. Certainly, if they are small vehicles, you could fit 2 cars in a 30-foot space. But I think I would like to say that a single car not parked perfectly and another car not parked perfectly could make it very difficult for the residents at the driveways on either end of that 30-foot curb from entering and exiting their driveways. So I think it's our judgment that that 30-foot curb is not wide enough for 2 cars to park. And thus we feel that it is safe for everyone and really no cost to put in that 10-foot no parking zone.
So Len, why don't you go first, and then we'll hear from Nancy, and then anybody else.
In Brookline, when we have parallel parking spots that are marked with paint, what typically are the dimensions?
We typically aim for 20 feet in terms of length.
Okay.
That certainly accommodates the largest vehicles, but certainly recognizing that some vehicles are not 20 feet in length, but 20 feet accommodates the maneuverability to get in and out of parallel parking spaces.
Okay. Just a question about the measurement. Was that done by hand, or is that like measured from Google Maps, or?
It is measured from Near Maps. So it is a computer program, but it is done by computer. So it is not exactly 30 feet. I will certainly grant that.
Okay.
But it is close to that.
Yeah, my measurement was a little bit larger, but not by much. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Nancy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it sounds like this street is a mess. Based on, the sort of, overwhelming neighbor sentiment against this, and they all say that parking seems to be a little out of control on this street, that people are blocking. I don't know that it's totally from the school, but it sounds like with the permit parking, with the teachers and parents picking up kids, that driveways are routinely blocked
Hmm.
and people are routinely parking in such a way as to make it either difficult or impossible for residents to get out of their driveways. And, I'm not sure I want to quarrel with staff in terms of if genuinely there's no parking that's being removed here, that if in fact there's no cost either to the neighbors or to members of the public who want to park on the street for the recreational facilities. I don't want to quarrel with that. And I don't know that there's anything that the transportation board can do, but I don't know when we have renewal of, teacher permit parking, but it sounds to me like, somebody needs to do something to stop, to try to enforce the rules here. I mean, it just seems like these people are being held captive and being stuck in their homes because people are routinely parking in front of their driveways. I would just recommend if there's anything that we can do, whether it's just, writing a letter or calling or asking the police if there's anything they can do to enforce the parking regulations on the street, or talk to the school, somebody on the school committee or somebody, that there's going to be if this comes up for renewal of the permit parking and people are routinely abusing this, that's going to be a concern. So that's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate that, Nancy. Thank you. Officer Sullivan, if we might avail ourselves of your comments at some point, if you are around, we'd love to hear any thoughts on Stedman Street enforcement and current conditions, please, sir.
Yeah, so, obviously, can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yeah, we hear you.
Obviously, anytime around a school is going to be difficult. This isn't the only school that has it. Obviously, they have parking on one side for residents. The other side during school pickup, people park, live parking. I think there's signs on there. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to refresh myself, but I believe on the left-hand side is live parking. It's a delicate situation. You got people trying to pick up first graders and second graders, and I've had kids, and it's tough. We've made recommendations around parks, around schools to put parking on one side to eliminate that, and then you can enforce all you want. You can go down there. Every day it's going to be the same until you figure out a parking plan, which, my suggestion is in this typical area, similar to, Harry Downs Field, we have parking complaints down there every time there's an event because people can't get in and out of their driveway. The solution has been, is do you put the parking for residents on the school side and then make no parking on the resident side where the driveways are? Yeah, and then it's a one-way street, but that also allows, now live parking's on the other side. It's not an easy solution, and I don't know if I have the answers, but we can enforce it all we can, but it's going to continue to be there every single day until you come up with a solution of parking where it's either you use bollards to block people from doing it. I don't know what the resources are, but that's
Gotcha. Okay, really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Richard, go ahead, please.
Question, do we use this area for staff parking permits? during the school day?
The permits, there are permits for the school around the neighboring streets. There are a couple on Stedman, but it goes from 58 Stedman down. So in front of the school area, they're not allowed to park.
Right. And then the other question is, with the driveways of all the abutters here on Stedman, couldn't they all ask for restricted parking to make their exiting their driveways? Because they all face, looking at all the driveways, I would say half of them are probably 8 feet wide. And I'm sure this is not the only resident has difficulty with exiting their driveway. And I just feel like, you know, we're solving a problem for one resident. But you know, if we have multiple residents on both sides of the roadway, then I think we kind of going down a rabbit's hole on this one. You know, does the problem more exist of how people park up against the exit of a driveway versus in the cars not able to turn immediately coming out of their driveway? Is that more the problem of how people park and they're so tight on the driveways? It's the turn radiuses where the churches, and that would be, you know, and then if there was some way of line painting parking spots, so people can see and allow like a 6 foot buffer of a driveway entrance, so a resident could exit their driveway and people can properly park. You know, it's a school zone. You know, Wendy and I, we were looking at Driscoll School, and you know, there's bad habits of people when they're picking up their kids and everything. I think if you have a restricted spot, I think people are just going to still park there. You know, and then trying to get enforcement behind it. But so that's all I have.
Thank you. Arden, I will get to you. We're just going to do the board folks first. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Dan, what's the percent utilization for the percent of permits versus the amount of, are we at 40%?
I don't have that calculated right now. At least I can't reach it.
Okay. 'Cause I know we typically max out at 40, right?
Reclamation of commercial and teacher permits on a street. I did want to clarify the driveway that has the concern that we're trying to restrict the space. It's not the cars parking next to the driveway, but across from the driveway.
There's
Yeah.
no parking on that side. I mean,
Okay. All right. Arden.
oh,
sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
yeah. So, I mean, I was struck by the comments of, well, maybe it makes more sense if there's no parking. I don't think it was meant that way, but seems like everyone has driveways here. So what's the value of having full-time parking here? Why not just make it 2-hour parking or something on the street in general and just call it a day? That keeps the cars moving. Everyone can get in and out of their driveways. Everyone has driveways. So there's really no issue.
It is 2-hour parking, just residents and permit holders can park longer.
You good, Jonathan?
Yep.
Arden, I got to vote for you once. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. I just want to thank you all for all the hard work you do. I really appreciate it so much. I want to thank Mr. Woolley for coming out to Stedman Street to have a site visit and take a look. I'd like to thank Brookline Transportation. I didn't catch your name for taking the time to really dive deep into this. However, I'd like to say I've lived at 72 Stedman Street since 2012. I've owned the house since 2012, and I'm not an expert in too many things, but I do feel like I'm an expert on Stedman Street. I have a dog. I am a walker. I am up and down Stedman Street many times a day, every single day. It is such a privilege to live on that street, despite all the nuances and challenges of our street. So the parking space that you're describing across from 89 Stedman can actually fit 2 cars. I drive a Bolt, and my Bolt is maybe about 12 feet long. I know the average length of a car is 14. 2 Bolts can fit in that spot. I have seen 2 cars fitting in that spot across from 89 Stedman, and there is a driveway right next to it, and that driveway is right across the street from 89 Stedman. So in theory, they should not have any issue pulling their car in and out of the driveways. No more issues than the rest of us who also have narrow driveways and live on the street. And there are no other no parking zones along the street, a testament to what Mr. Murphy said. And that is that no one else has requested this. We all have to maneuver around the traffic of the Ruffin Ridley School, as well as having narrow driveways. And the usual, inconveniences of a street. So if we allow one person to have a no parking zone, then does that mean that all of a sudden everyone is going to start asking for no parking zones? So anyway, that's just how I wanted to respond to some of the things that you've spoke about. And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a few prepared words.
Brevity is the soul of all we do here, Arden.
I just appreciate you all so much. And Mr. Woolley shares with me sometimes about the goings-on of the Transportation Board, and I have the utmost respect. And he shares it with me when we are walking together. This request is being considered under false qualifications because it absolutely would eliminate valuable community parking. Not only is there a driveway directly across the street from 89 Stedman's driveway, but it would also take away not just 1 parking space, but 2 because of the layout of that driveway. And as I said, that would be 2 smaller cars like my own, my Bolt, and I have seen 2 cars parked along that 30-foot expanse, or I think you said it was about 30 feet. As I said in my letter to your esteemed board, every space is needed for the staff and teachers at the Ruffin Ridley School, and for the recreational use of the Stedman Street basketball courts, tennis courts, turf field, and playgrounds. This leaves already severely limited space for the permanent residents of our street. To take away 10 feet of parking for the sole benefit of 1 household is a hardship on the rest of the community. In addition, approving a no parking zone for 1 household address is not fair and equitable to the other households with driveways on Stedman Street who experience similar challenges and share the same concerns that there is limited space to maneuver. As I have been known to say to a neighbor or two, we all share our space and endure inconveniences for the privilege of living on Stedman Street. So thank you all very much for your consideration. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you have about Stedman Street, because as I said, it's the one thing I do know a lot about.
Thank you very much. Rob Guptill, is the petitioner here? Do you know who the petitioner is? I didn't see it in the memo.
I do not recall the name of the petitioner.
If the petitioner is here, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. Buddy. Okay. So with that, is there anyone else who'd like to offer comments at this time? Okay, then let's bring it back to the board. I'll go first because I'm already talking. Oh, Wendy, go ahead. Or did you want to go after me?
I can go after you.
Okay. My attitude is that there have been driveways on this street since there have been cars, and cars were a lot bigger in the 70s, and somehow everyone survived. So I don't think this is necessary myself, but that's my opinion. Wendy, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I am concerned about the, like people said in their comments, we could just get a flood of these requests if we, say yes to this one, then we've set precedent, and why wouldn't anybody else start asking for it? I am just curious from staff about the width and whether it is, I know it might be difficult, but can a car get out of this driveway if there's a car parked there?
I mean, they have for 100 years, right?
Yeah, I'll just say we have not performed an audit return analysis of this. The petitioner, I do recall from their message saying that they have damaged their car on a couple of occasions. But to everyone's point, this driveway has existed before. It will exist in the future. There have been many successful maneuvers in and out of this driveway, I'm sure.
Okay.
And there's no parking on one side of the roadway, correct? It's only on one side that you park, right?
Yeah, once you get further past the school,
Yeah.
so before you get to the bump in for the loading live area, it's no
Yeah.
parking on that side.
Yeah, so people have always done like a 3-point turn if it's, you know,
So it's a
so,
one-way,
yeah.
so.
No, I mean, if they run into if it's too tight, Brian getting out,
Oh,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
car across the street, they back up a
I
little
mean,
bit
look-
and then they make the turn.
A lot of us live on narrow streets and we've somehow managed to survive this long. All right, does anybody want to make a motion with respect to the request for a no parking area across from 89 Stedman Street? This is item 3B on the agenda. You can move to approve, you can move no action.
I would like to make a motion to no action regarding this request.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, Nancy. Rob, call the roll, please.
Nancy,
yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes. That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll now get back to the rest of the consent agenda. Is there any other item that folks would like to see removed and discussed individually? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda? So that's all items except 3B.
So moved.
So,
I'll take
Second.
that as a move from Wendy and a second from Richard. Let's call that roll again, please.
All right, Wendy,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Richard,
yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes. Okay, again, those are all unanimous. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to 4A, which is member updates. I'll go first today. So Emily Jacobson texted me that she's stepping down as chair of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. We will miss Emily, and I want to thank her for all the efforts she's made as in her short term as chair. It's been a short term, but it's been very productive, I would suggest. So thank you, Emily, and we look forward to hearing from the bike committee as to who the next chair will be. I've been asked by I've been asked by some members of the select board, or a member of the select board, to appoint a fourth advisory committee through the transportation board. And this would be a advisory committee of folks who are car dependent. Honestly, when I first got the request, I thought it was tongue in cheek, but it's not. In the interest of transparency, I see no reason not to appoint such a committee. I asked Rob to put that on our agenda for the 24th, next meeting next week. And we'll go through the process of trying to find people to fill that committee out. And I look forward to the discussion about what sort of folks we would like to see serve on that committee and represent car users in Brookline. Jonathan, I see your hand.
I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but one, I assume we first have to agree to create such a committee.
Yes,
And two, we would have to create some sort of
charge.
to them, whatever that
Correct.
possibly could be.
Correct.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, I'll reserve my comments for next week. How about that? Any other member updates? I know we saw each other last week for quite a while. That was fun. We missed you, Nancy. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to DPW update. Who's got that one tonight?
So unfortunately, we don't have a DPW update tonight.
Okay,
Didn't have time to get prepared, but we will have the DPW update for next week.
great. Well, that puts us right back on time, which makes me very happy. So we'll move on to item 5A, which is presentation and action on a proposal to increase fines for parking. Take it away.
All right. So this presentation is made because, as you all know, a couple weeks ago, the Transportation Board made some suggestions for parking fines. And as you also discussed at that time, your vote and your recommendations went to the Select Board that considered them and slightly modified them. So this presentation is taking the Select Board's recommendations back to the Transportation Board. I think in terms of what they're recommending, it aligns with what some of you are actually talking about many weeks ago. So hopefully you will all be aligned. So let's just go through it. So the Transportation Board previously recommended to increase most fines to $40. The Select Board opted to increase fines to a higher level, $45. And so tonight we need a reconciling vote between for the Transportation Board to reconcile the Select Board approved fine schedule with what the Transportation Board would like to do. This table, which is also in the memorandum, lists the various fines at the different levels. Not all fines are at $45. There are some that are higher, but essentially the base fine level is $45 that the Select Board set it at, and then the late fees have not changed. Essentially, they would still be set at $55 and $70 as part of this change. So that's pretty much it. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Rob? We discussed this topic at length, I think, in May, maybe April. If there are no questions, would someone, Rob, do you have language?
Yes.
I know it's in the thing, but.
Would you like me to read it? Sorry.
I'll do it. Is there a motion to approve the Select Board approved parking fine increases as discussed this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Rob, why don't you call the roll?
Jonathan. Oop. Muted, Jonathan. And you just took a drink.
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes, that is unanimous. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. We are going to move on to item 5B. Discussion and action on a letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals relative to the 429 Harvard Street development. Take it away.
I just need to make Jennifer a co-host.
Not me, actually, but thank you. Could you make Jeff Dirk, who is the project traffic engineer, the host? He has a presentation. My name is Jennifer DePazzo Gilbert, and I'm counsel for the owner of 429 Harvard Street. And we started the process for a comprehensive permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's been about 4 or 5 months now. And we've just started on the design review with the design review peer reviewer. And so part of the process is usually that the Transportation Board and staff, with the assistance of staff, will make a recommendation to the ZBA. 429 Harvard Street is really right in the heart of Coolidge Corner. And it's across from the relatively new Tate coffee shop. And it is the old Citizens Bank building, which is completely paved over right now. And the proposal currently under review at the zoning board is for a multifamily rental building with approximately 40 units. The program isn't entirely set yet because, as I said, we're undergoing design review. So approximately 40 units, a multifamily residential building. There is proposed right now 1,750 square feet of commercial on the ground floor. And Jeff Dirk has read the town's traffic peer reviewers report. And he's going to go ahead and make a presentation. And if you see Norberto Leone join, he's the project architect that's also joining a little bit late, but he's also available should folks have questions on the building. But Jeff, I'm going to let you go ahead since Norberto's not on yet.
That sounds good. And thank you, Jennifer. And good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jeffrey Dirk with Vanessa and Associates, the transportation consultants for the project. I have a brief presentation, and if you would allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, Jeff, are you not? Let's see. Oh, here we go. Yep.
Oh, everyone can see my screen? Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. No, there we go. So I'm going to I have a high level overview of our transportation assessment that was prepared for the project. We have had the benefit of peer review. Obviously, we've worked very closely with the transportation department in scoping out the traffic study. Since then, we've had the peer review by Apex Engineering on behalf of the zoning board. The engineering department and the transportation department have provided some comments as well to us as we've undertaken this analysis. As I go through my presentation, you will see that we've kind of worked in some of the information that I think as the board gets further on in the meeting tonight, we'll vote to make some possible recommendations to the zoning board. I've incorporated some of those suggestions that have come from the transportation department into my presentation as well. So if you did read the transportation study, you'll see some changes, and these changes are to be reflective of what you're going to discuss tonight as it relates to the project. So just by way of a summary of the transportation analysis that we've undertaken, we did obtain a scope of work from the transportation department prior to conducting our analysis for the project. The study was done in accordance with that scoping determination. We consulted extensively with the town as well as Mass DOT as it relates to our analysis. The project itself, as Jennifer has described, it's 40 residential units. The small amount of retail space on the ground floor, a little over 1,700 square feet of space. We are, on Harvard Street. We have access to 2 bus routes or a bus stop actually that's right adjacent to the project site at the Harvard Coolidge intersection. We also have a blue bike station right across the street. So this is a perfect site similar to others that the board has reviewed in terms of our ability to be able to effectuate changes in use of single occupancy vehicle and actually encourage people not to use a single occupancy vehicle. And we've done that through a reduced on-site parking supply that's consistent with the town's goals for this district. But we also have a transportation demand management program, which we will codify in our transportation access plan agreement with the town as well. But looking at the impacts of the project, the 40 units with the small amount of commercial space on the ground floor, it's going to generate somewhere around 16 additional vehicle trips. So it's not a significant increase in traffic to the area. And again, it's reliant upon us effectuating those mode share changes for the project. But looking at that additional traffic, we didn't show that there was any significant increases in delays at intersections. Delays didn't go up by any more. It's less than 10 seconds of added delay, just given the amount of traffic or small amount of traffic the project's going to generate. And the vehicle queuing at any intersection didn't go up by any more than 1 vehicle. So it wasn't significantly impactful in terms of increases in delays in vehicle queuing at intersections. However, again, the key thing to this is really going to be low parking supply on site, which we've committed to doing, and then the transportation demand management program as well to effectuate those mode shifts that we want to see. Vehicles exiting the project site driveway to Coolidge Street operated with limited delay. But I do want to caveat that to say that that's really dependent upon the queuing that happens from the Harvard Street intersection. As Jennifer described, we're right on the corner of that intersection. So, if there's 2 or 3 vehicles in queue, it extends back to the driveway. You can still get out, but if we get to that 4th vehicle, then we'd start to be able to block that ability. Independent of the project, we did identify the intersection just to the, I guess it would be to the northeast of the project at Coolidge and Clarence Street. Very small number of motor vehicle crashes there, but the number of crashes in relation to the volume of traffic was disproportionate. So we would expect, excuse me, a lower incidence of crashes than what was reported. But I would report that as you look beyond 2020, so we looked at a 5-year period that stretched back to 2018. If we look after 2020, there were no crashes at that intersection. So really that pre-COVID period, we did experience a small number of crashes. I think there were 3 over that time period. And then since that time, there haven't been any crashes at the intersection, at least recently, that have been reported. So even though we did find that exceedance, we're not identifying it as a high crash location based on what's actually happening at the intersection. So we did want to point that out. Lines of sight at the driveway to the project, there is, on-street parking that exists there today. We are going to be closing one of the driveways to the property. There's 2 driveways there today out to Coolidge Street. We'll be closing one and using a driveway that's further away from the Harvard Street intersection. One of the things that's been discussed with Apex, and this also may be something that is in the Transportation Board's letter as well, is that as we close the driveway, rather than add additional on-street parking along the project side of Coolidge Street, the suggestion is really not to add parking, and that would allow us to maintain proper sight lines looking toward Harvard Street. So that's something that I know Apex had recommended in consideration for the Transportation Board as well. So looking into a little bit more detail, here's the project site here shown in yellow. As Jennifer had mentioned, the bank building exists on the site there today. Harvard Street obviously running in the northwest southeast direction, and then Coolidge Street in this location here. So we're right on the corner there of the existing the site that's there. Existing building, paved, 2 driveways out to Coolidge Street. This is the study area that we were asked to evaluate as a result of the scoping determination. Again, looking at the project, it's not a large traffic generator, but understanding pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, and then really looking at the 2 proximate intersections of the project. So the Harvard Coolidge intersection and then the Clarence Coolidge intersection. I know the board is very familiar with the transportation system in this area. Coolidge Street does turn to a one-way roadway away from Clarence Street just to the north of where the project site is there. This slide also shows that this is a very walkable site. We have sidewalks along both sides of the intersecting roadways. Where you see there are blue lines, that's where there are existing crosswalks. So we're looking at Harvard Street, there's crosswalks across all of the approaches to the intersection. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have the benefit of 2 bus stops on either side of the corners of Harvard Street. And then there's also a blue bike station just to the I guess would be to the northwest of the project site, all walkable within a couple minutes walking distance of the project site. And then, of course, there's bike lanes along Harvard Street, which are going to be improved as a part of the Harvard Street improvement project, which will result in some repaving and additions of bike lanes as well as some additions of rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So this is really, again, a perfect site for a reduced auto mode share for the residents in the commercial component of the project. We did undertake a parking inventory, which we're going to be expanding as a part of the project. We are providing 12 on-site parking spaces for the residential component, which is in compliance with the zoning district's requirements, which have a maximum of 1 per unit and a minimum of 0. So we don't need to have parking. The same thing for the commercial space. There's no on-site parking required for that. So we are providing 12 parking spaces for the 40 units. One of the things, again, to look at with that reduced parking supply on the site is, what's available for parking in the area. And so we did undertake a review of the locations of on-street parking, any of the regulations. We've been asked to expand that to include the public parking lot that I believe is that we'll call it the Fuller Street lot, which I think it's in this area here. But we're going to be providing some additional information on parking as well for the project, just to, as I said, be able to quantify what's available, not only in terms of physical mark spaces, but actual availability. So we're going to be doing an observation of parking demands in this area as well. So that's one of the things the zoning board and their consultant had asked us to do. So we will be doing that as a part of the project. So this is the trip generation for the project. So as I mentioned, this column here is what we're predicting for automobile trips. Again, 40 residential units and 1,746 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor. So we've estimated the trips associated with that. We've split it up in terms of the modes of transportation that are expected from the project. The auto mode share is expected to be probably the smaller portion of what we expect in terms of trips associated with the project. transit being a larger percentage than the auto, but our ped and bike trips we think are going to be really more significant. As we look at the census tract area, and I think the board's probably well familiar with this as well in terms of recent trends, about 30% of the residents that live in this area in the census tract report that they work from home. So that's where, as we look at these types of trips, they tend to be more skewed towards pedestrian and bicycle because of the amenities that exist in the area, but also that very high work from home component that is kind of a reality of how I think we operate today. So on a daily basis, in terms of automobile trips, we're expecting 128 automobile trips to be generated, 68 transit trips, and a large percentage, 82 pedestrian and bicycle trips. During the morning peak hour, so this is the roadway peak hour on Harvard Street, that peak hour occurs between 7:45 and 8:45 a.m. We're expecting 11 vehicle trips, 5 transit trips, and 6 pedestrian and bicycle trips. And then the evening peak hour, and Harvard Street evening peak hour is 3:45 to 4:45 p.m. We're predicting 16 automobile trips, 9 transit trips, and 15 pedestrian and bicycle trips. So again, looking at these numbers, highly walkable, bikeable area, and that's the trend that we see in the census data, as well as what we're expecting for the residents of the project itself. These next 2 slides show our dispersal of trips. So as I mentioned, not a significant impact for the project. And one of that reasons is low automobile trips, but also what's known as dispersal. So obviously you come out of the driveway to the project. We have one driveway as far away from Harvard Street as we can position it. That traffic then comes out of the driveway, concentrated at the driveway, and then dispersed as we get further away. So most of the traffic you see is oriented to and from Harvard Street. Lesser amounts of the intersecting roadways. Most of the traffic on Harvard Street is heading to the northwest, so toward Boston and Commonwealth Avenue. The reason you see this discrepancy in terms of entering and exiting traffic is because of the one-way section of roadway on Coolidge Street, just to the north of Clarence. So that traffic that goes out that way, when it comes back, has to come back basically on Harvard Street. So that's why you see that discrepancy in terms of the flow. And these are automobile trips. We look at the commercial component, it's relatively balanced in terms of those trips along Harvard Street. One of the things that was pointed out in terms of our analysis is, as I said, we're not providing any on-site parking for the commercial component of the project. The way we've undertaken our analysis, as you see here, is we did assign those trips to the Coolidge Street driveway. In reality, that's not what's going to happen. They'll either use public parking that's available in the area. And so rather than the trips actually entering and exiting the site, it's likely to use the parking along Harvard Street, the metered parking that exists in the area. So as a result of our analysis, we have a series of recommendations. And as I said, these recommendations have been updated to reflect some of the items that you're going to be discussing tonight as they relate to the project. The driveway itself is going to be 20 feet in width, so we've kept it as narrow as possible to allow for two-way traffic. This width of the driveway is also a controlling feature as it relates to the opening into the garage. So the garage will be open to some extent in terms of being able to see as you're exiting. So there'll be columns so that you can look to the left or right. You're not blocked by a wall. However, the driveway needs to be 20 feet so that you can have a vehicle exiting and a vehicle entering and not having a vehicle stopped within the sidewalk area. So that's where that controlling width comes into play. The driveway's been designed consistent with other driveways in the town. So we're emphasizing pedestrians. So the pedestrians cross flush across the driveway, so what's known as a pan type driveway. Vehicles ramp up to go into the garage, pedestrians stay flush, so we're not impeding their flow, and we want to emphasize the fact, again, that we're prioritizing pedestrians over motor vehicles. Vehicles exiting the site, there'll be a stop sign for vehicles exiting. Also for vehicles exiting, there will be a watch for pedestrian signs facing the exiting vehicles within the garage. So stop, and then making sure that everyone knows to watch for pedestrians in the sidewalk. There will also be audible and visual warning device exiting so that pedestrians will be able to see a flashing light and also hear a message or a tone to let them know that a vehicle is exiting from the garage. So that's what we've proposed to warn pedestrians. Signs and pavement markings within the site will be compliant with accepted standards. The site triangle areas of the project site, as I said, our recommendation really as it relates to site triangles is just not to add any additional on-site parking proximate to the driveway so that we make sure that we've got clear sight lines. We do have sight lines for a vehicle exiting to see a pedestrian, because again, as I said, the facade of the building doesn't come all the way down or flush to the back of sidewalk. There's actually columns and open space so that a motorist will be able to see out looking to the left or right. So they'll be able to see a pedestrian, but the pedestrian will also be able to see into the garage as well. One of the things that was recommended, we had actually suggested, as we're closing the driveway, an opportunity to establish a loading zone along Coolidge Street. However, we agree with the idea of having a Harvard Street loading zone. And I think that's a part of one of the recommendations or suggestions of the zoning board that you will have. And I think the transportation director was very clear that the policy is this isn't exclusive for the project. It's a loading zone for a specific time period that we would work on with the transportation director. Outside of that defined time period, it reverts to metered parking. And again, the idea would be for us to establish what we think the best hours are for the project, but that loading zone is not exclusive to the project. It just happens to be located in front of the project site so that we're able to use it. But again, not exclusive as it relates to the project. We have proposed initially that we would have 5 EV parking spaces within the garage. Again, we have 12 parking spaces. 5 of them would be EV immediately when the project is built. We are committing to 20% of the total parking supply to be EV ready, which is the current standard for the building code for the stretch code. Offsite recommendations, a Harvard Coolidge Street intersection. Again, because we want to make sure that this is a pedestrian focused project and that it's also safe for pedestrian and bicycle activity in the area, we had recommended that the curb line extensions be provided on the project side, so 2 corners. What has come back from the transportation director, and again, for your consideration, and we don't have any issue with this, is that all 4 corners would include the curb line extensions. One of the things, as I mentioned, there is the Harvard Street Improvement Project, which would be some repaving. And so once the road is repaved, there's a 5-year moratorium to cutting into that pavement. And so the way the dynamic or the suggestion has been made to us is that to the extent that we seek a certificate of occupancy prior to the completion of that project, we would undertake the design and construction of the curb line extensions. If it's going to occur or certificate of occupancy occurs after that work is done, we would then coordinate and provide monies to the town to allow for those improvements to take place at the appropriate time. So it just makes sure from the town's perspective that that infrastructure gets in place, either as a part of the project or the money would go to the town so it could be done as soon as possible outside of the moratorium that would exist. Mobility improvements that we're planning, we will be reconstructing the sidewalk along the frontage of the project in both Harvard Street and Coolidge Street. It will be improved to the standards of the town as approved by the Director of Engineering and Transportation to make sure, again, that we're consistent with ADA as well as the Massachusetts Architectural Barriers Board requirements for passage for pedestrians in the area there. The sidewalks are in varying conditions. We've rated them as fair to poor. And so they are in need of the reconstruction. So that's something that we've committed to doing. Lastly is our transportation demand management measures. We will be implementing a transportation demand management program that is consistent with the town's requirements, and I've listed a number of those requirements that will be in our plan. This plan, as I said, will be a part of the Transportation Access Plan agreement that we will sign with or have approved by the transportation director. So having an on-site transportation coordinator, providing information about public transportation services. I've talked about the pedestrian accommodations that we will have for the sidewalk along the project site, but also as we're looking at residential lobby doors, making sure that they are accessible and that you're able to get out to the sidewalks in a safe manner. On-site parking will be unbundled from tenant leases, so they're going to be sold separately at market rates, which is a requirement. We will be offering new residents a 1-month or 30-day unlimited MBTA bus subway pass. Or a Blue Bikes membership for the first year of occupancy, limited to 1 per unit, which I think is consistent with the town's regulations. I already mentioned the loading zone along Harvard Street that we will establish for the project with the approval of the Transportation Board. We do have an internal mail drop and package delivery station within the site, so that's helpful in terms of reducing some of that off-site activity relating to mailing packages or just going to the post office. Commercial tenants, again, a small amount of commercial space on the first floor. They will be encouraged to offer specific on-site amenities or management such as the direct deposit of paychecks. We're also going to be encouraging them to, similar to the residential components, offer Blue Bikes memberships as well as MBTA passes to their employees as well. We are providing internal weather-protected secure bicycle parking. We are proposing 20 bicycles in a secure bicycle room within the building itself that's accessible from both the parking garage as well as the residential lobby area. We are also proposing to have an off-site or an exterior bicycle rack as well, primarily used for guests, as well as those that may be patronizing the commercial space. And again, as I mentioned, we will be effectuating this as a part of the TAPA that will be developed and approved by the town's transportation director. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have now or during the part of the discussion that you have as it relates to recommendations.
Well, thank you for the presentation.
We do have the architect on,
yeah,
Mr. King.
I was going to invite him to join us, Jen.
Yeah, but in the interest of time, I'll leave it up to you whether you want a presentation. This is traffic focused, so he's here to answer any design questions that may come up. Just so
Mr. Leon, why don't you just say hello, give us a very brief overview of the project, and then we'll get to our questions.
Hi, my name is Norberto Leon, and I'm the architect for the project. So can I share my screen with you guys really quickly?
Again, please, very brief. We just want to talk about the transportation issues.
Yeah, I'm just going to share the floor plan with you guys, just so you can see some of the changes that we've made to address the comment of basically moving everything to the Harvard Street side, with the entrance to the residential on Harvard Street now, and also the commercial at the corner of Harvard and Coolidge. And then the trash room, we've also moved over to the Harvard Street side, so that basically everything that is going to be happening is on the Harvard Street side, with loading and offloading and entrance and exit for residences into their into the building, and then the parking for the residences on the Coolidge Street side, which we've actually set further back from the abutters and created a green space in the back. And
thanks.
Nice.
Thank you, Norberto. That's
any
good.
questions?
Looks great. We're going to turn to the transportation board members first for questions, and then we'll open it up to the public for comments. So if there are questions, we might direct them your way. We might just have a little talk amongst ourselves. These things always go different ways. Let's start with you, Mr. Murphy. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, on the exiting from the building, you mentioned there would be some either warning signs or could you explain that a little bit more? And the reason why I'm asking on that is we just installed a rectangular flashing beacon at the intersection of Sewell Ave and St. Paul. And it's right next to a resident, which we never even thought of because it has, well, whatever the reason that they have, it has the noise for the blind and the hearing impaired. And so all of a sudden this is going at all times at night. So I'm thinking, if there's a warning system sound every time someone is exiting the building, is that going to impact the abutters across the street? That's for an example.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, the devices, and you may have discussed this before. So you can both reduce the intensity of any lighting during hours in the evening, because you don't need as intense of a light because you can see it pretty clearly during the evening hours. You can do the same thing with the sound. The sound, as you look at it, there's other options rather than the sound as well. You can do tactile strips because the sound is really more so for visually impaired or pedestrians that aren't paying attention if they're looking at their phone or walking. But there is the option as well to do tactile strips, just like you have at the bottom of the ramps on either side of the driveway. So that would give you the option. You don't always have to have the audible or visual cues there because of the things that you had said. In a residential neighborhood, you need to be sensitive of that. Either reduce the volume and reduce the light intensity during hours of darkness. But there are other features such as the tactile strips that you can put on either side of the driveway. A consideration as you're thinking about that is not a large number of vehicles parked within the garage. So it's, unlike a large parking garage where there's going to be a lot of ins and outs happening where you'd be more concerned about it, that's not really the case here. And so an alternative approach such as those tactile strips may be something that would be advisable.
Yeah, no, just if there's a option to turn it on or off or something like that, gives the owner the flexibility depending on if it does impact, someone goes to work at 3 o'clock in the morning, so that's all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a very good comment and something to be considered.
So Richard, we've had extensive discussions about this topic before. There's lots of folks in the disability community who rely on the audio function. And so I wouldn't be comfortable supporting anything that suggests it ever be turned off. So, we can discuss that if you want, but we've been down that road before, and I think my position's pretty clear, but I'll leave it up to us to talk about that when we get there. Jonathan, no, sorry, Nancy, you were next.
Yes, how many handicapped accessible parking spaces will you have?
So I'm going to defer to Jennifer Noberto on that in terms of the number of spaces.
No,
We have one right now in the parking lot.
Like me, ain't nobody that can sing like me.
So my concern, and I don't know whether you run this by the Disability Commission or not, but and I'm the liaison to the Disability Commission. And the concern there has been that with these projects that, normally you require a certain number of parking spots. And of those parking spots, a certain percentage would need to be handicapped accessible. When you reduce parking, if you reduce handicapped spaces as well, that's an issue for the disability community because their concern is there aren't that many buildings that are accessible to them. So they can't live in a building that doesn't have an accessible spot available to them. So I can't talk numbers, I can't say specifics, but the concern is their position has consistently been that reducing overall parking should not reduce the number of handicapped accessible spots that would have been available if you were offering a larger total number. I don't know what the specifics are. I'm just suggesting that that's a concern that they have.
thank you.
Thank you. I guess I would also just add, Nancy, that I think state law is one handicap spot for every 25 non. So
Right, but what happens
these folks are
is-
well under the limit. And I don't know if it's fair for us to sort of say you need to do more than state law says.
Well, but the problem with the state law, and this is their position, they're not saying it's legally required. What
Mhm.
they're saying is they're asking for more considerations in the sense that if you offered 40 parking spots, all right, if that's what you would normally have,
Mhm.
all right, then you'd have a certain percentage. And when you reduce overall parking, it shouldn't reduce the number of handicap spots, not because that's the law, but that because it's a concern of theirs that it reduces the housing that's available.
I don't buy it. I don't follow that. The whole point of having fewer parking spots is to reduce the demand, and not every single person who needs an ADA spot needs to have a car. There's plenty of places where folks with wheel mobility devices can get to without needing a car.
Well, if you run
Overall,
it
for
by the
society,
dis-
reducing the number of parking spaces is a great thing. And it's something that town meeting has told us pretty strongly they want us to do. So, I mean, I respect your opinion. I just disagree with you on this one.
Well, I hope that you'll, that at some point the Disability Commission can be heard on this because,
Sure.
maybe, there's some people who are not car dependent, but there's a very high percentage of disabled who are dependent
Yep.
on cars and parking.
Sure.
And I, you know, that this is their concern. I'm just,
I read all the research too on this stuff, so I hear both sides of that argument all the time. So I respect your agreement. I just respectfully not disagree. Len, I think you're up.
Yeah, I think I saw that there were 20 bike parking spaces, and I'm wondering if that's consistent with the recent bylaw change we made with the 2025 warrant Article 16 that said we would have 1.1 bike parking spaces per unit, and that 10% of the total bike spaces should be for large bicycles like e-bikes and cargo bikes.
Yeah, so it's definitely not. And that's a waiver that we'll be requesting.
Can we put it on our letter asking that we could include that?
We do. It's
Oh.
I think it's number 4, maybe number 3. I have to look.
Yeah.
Yeah, number 3, an increase beyond the presented 20 on-site bike parking spaces as requested, and it references bylaw 6.05 and the 1.1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Any other questions or comments from Transportation Board members? Okay, let's hear from the public. If any member of the public would like to offer a comment or ask a question, we'd love to hear from you. Fran Perler.
Hello, thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me get my thing out there. I am Fran Perler. I am a second line abutter, and I'm also a member of the advisory committee, just to disclose. I have a couple of questions if you would let me ask them. And I apologize for coming in a little late. I had another meeting, but in your parking study, was it done or will it be done while school is in session? Because Coolidge Street is part of the teachers parking overlay. And we have 3 or 4 teachers parking on Coolidge and on Fuller and our other residential streets all the time during the school year. And they park there all day.
So through the chairman, yes, we are actually going to be undertaking it. Well, I should ask the question, are schools out this week?
Next week.
I don't know. I don't have kids.
So we're going to be undertaking it. We're doing the inventories this week, so they're going to be done tomorrow. The observations will either be done tomorrow or they're going to be done on Tuesday of next week.
That'll get it once school's in session, as long as you're not out there Friday.
Yeah. So my other question is, I assume most of your discussion was about metered parking, and I assume you're going to look at the non-metered parking.
Yes.
You know, because this is very busy with the butchery and Tate, etc. So this may be a question for Brian. As a resident, I can get a residential parking sticker for my street that allows me to park all day and not just 2 hours. This building has an address of Harvard Street, I believe. Will the residents be allowed to buy a Coolidge Street residential parking sticker since their address is Harvard Street?
That's a good question, and I don't think I know the answer, but we probably should put something in here about that, limiting it, Fran. So
yeah,
thank you.
because I'm
Good
sure
idea.
the residents on Coolidge would prefer not. And then a silly question is, when the bicycles go in and out, if they go in and out the car exit and entrance, do they trigger those light things and the sounds also, or does it have to be a car?
We could, it depends on where we set the sensors. We could set them so that it does also trigger the bicycles as well. But it's really, I think it's going to be up to the transportation director as to how they want us to in design and install it. So we can be either way.
Okay. And those are some of my basic questions right now, and appreciate that. And like I said, the residents who live there, I live on Fuller Street, not Coolidge. I have a residential parking sticker for Fuller Street, and maybe one time out of 10 that I want to park in front of my house, can I find a space? So I wonder what time or times of day will you be looking at the parking? And will you do like a morning, afternoon, and, you know, sort of thing? How comprehensive will it be?
So through the chairman, it's going to be actually at 12 hours, 6 to 6 is what we're doing. The peak residential demand is before 6 a.m. So we're going to get 6 a.m. and then we're going to 6 p.m. So it should capture the teacher parking and all the things that you've described.
How often do you sample in that 12 hours?
It's a minimum sampling of 30 minutes.
But is it 30 minutes every hour or 30 minutes in the morning?
No, every 30 minutes for each and every
Okay.
hour of the 12 hours. So it should be very comprehensive and should pick up the things that you've identified.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Brian.
Thanks, Fran. Wendy, I'm going to come back to you and then we'll get back to the public. Go ahead, please.
I just had a quick clarification question. I was a little unclear about the 1 month in the first year of like T-Pass or Blue Bike membership. I didn't understand what 1 month in the first year meant. So you get to pick whichever month you want, or?
It typically, and again, this will be in our transportation access plan agreement. It's typically when you sign the lease, you identify that you'd like this pass. It's going to be offered to you. So what we've done is the MBTA Transit Pass I believe it's $70. So when you sign a lease, you'd be offered that if you would like to have it for your first month of the lease that you have. The other option is you could also accept a Blue Bikes membership, and I think the Blue Bikes membership, I want to say it's either 125 or 136, something like that. The resident would have an option of either 1 month transit pass with the MBTA, or they could have the 1 year Blue Bikes membership. It's their choice. So that was probably the confusion. It's 1 month of an MBTA pass, around $70, $75, or 1 year of a Blue Bikes membership, which runs about 125, 135.
And that MBTA 1 month pass is only an offer during the first year.
It's, we can work that out in the transportation access plan agreement. I mean, if someone moves in if they sign a lease for a year and they move in, and let's just say the first month they weren't aware of it, they have too much going on, and then the next month that they're into their lease that they want the transit pass, we probably could work something out with the language that, if it's not the first month, the second month they want it, they could do it. It's really we could work that out in the agreement.
Okay, that's fine. I just was confused about the language. Got it now. Thanks.
And Jeffrey, I had a question. Is the one ADA spot, is that van accessible?
I'm going to ask Roberto.
Yes, it is van accessible.
Thank you. Dr. John Bowman, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. John Bowman, Town Meeting Member Precinct 10. I want to second Len's comment about the bicycle parking accommodation. And I understand the Transportation Board has already prepared a letter referring to the
So
parking,
staff has
bicycle parking
suggested language, and in that suggested language, there is a request from us to the zoning board that as part of their special permit, they increase the number of parking spaces.
Well, I'd just like to see that language tweaked a little bit so that it includes meeting the large bicycle parking requirement of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, it references the zoning ordinance and requires them to be in compliance with it.
Okay, thanks.
So I think we're covered, John. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Janet, I think you're up.
Tap to unmute. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I am in my car, so just a minute. I'm just pulling over. I am the direct abutter living in, I own 64 Coolidge Street, where I live with my 2 adult children, Sam Feldman and Lily Feldman. Or I guess I should say Lily Eckelman Feldman and Sam Eckelman Feldman. Our house is an unusual in its driveway and the way that traffic exists and how we get in and out. We're zoned with 4 cars parked in our driveway. It was a requirement. Our lot, which is directly across where the proposed changes to the curb cuts will be, we currently, well, the history of our house is that it was built in 1900. And then in 1921, it was, it used to face Harvard Street. In 1921, it was picked up and rotated 90 degrees to where we are. And at that time, they did not change the driveway per se. And we have a very, very precarious driveway. It only works because I back out, we all back out, the 4 cars that need to come and go, back out. And I have to, I don't know how you say this, but I have to like catty corner and back into the entrance of the bank parking lot in order to get out, because there's no way to turn around in my driveway with all the cars. So I am very, very concerned that the proposed changes would make for an accident and almost nearly impossible getting out of my driveway. And so I would like, I mean, one option I'd like to see considered is the possibility of removing parking directly across from my driveway so that a car can back out. I'm very concerned about Amazon delivery trucks to the many units. I'm very concerned about Ubers and Lyfts double parking there. I'm just very concerned that this is going to lead to collisions and just making my home not usable the way that it was zoned to be used. And I'm feeling very, very worried about this. And it also feels unfair because, you know, we followed all the rules. We carefully researched everything. Our property is actually zoned the same as the commercial Harvard facing property. It was one plot originally, and then it was in 1921 is when it was cut into 2 parts and divided, one into those retail brick storefronts that currently face Harvard Street, and the house, as I mentioned, was moved to our house. And I need people to be able to come and go throughout the day to my house. I am an artist, a professional artist working on all 5 continents of the world. People come and go to my home where I work, and I really need to be able to use my driveway. And I really, really am hopeful that this traffic study and the town committee will find a really fair solution that doesn't create a hardship for me as a direct abutter.
Well, I can't guarantee there'll be no hardships. I certainly open to the idea of changing the parking directly across from your driveway. Not something we can really do right now until we sort of, you know, see how the building is working with the environment. But I think it's certainly something that we would be amenable to, you know, even when it's close to opening, once they get their certificate of occupancy. If you can come back, I'm sure we'd be happy to make sure that you can get in and out of your driveway at that point.
One other question, Brian, is I think another thing that would help throughout the day, many people drive into Coolidge Street looking for parking and then turn around. They often illegally pull into my driveway. So another thing that I think would significantly help with all of the issues mentioned is to make the 1 block one way in the direction. So I think that would mean that these cars at least would not, the Uber drivers, the delivery trucks, everyone would know it's one way. And then at least it would be safer. So those are two things that I think would help mitigate any hardship. And I think there will be hardships, which I think is unfair. But if there are hardships, making it one way and removing the parking directly across from I need to be able to back out safely from my driveway.
So you're
All right.
suggesting
Is
it be
that
a,
a possibility? A one-way
suggesting
just
it-
in the one block?
so it's two-way right now? Coolidge Street is two-way
Correct.
right now. I didn't know that. Okay. So you're suggesting it be a one-way from Harvard for the first block, meaning that the people exiting from 429 would have to turn right and go
Yes.
around the block. Okay.
Yes, that will help with
Brian,
traffic.
Can I interrupt for a
Of
second?
course.
All Coolidge and Fuller Street are all one ways and Thorndike, except for the block between Harvard Street and I think it's Clarence.
Clarence.
It's two ways. And I support Janet's idea. I'd love Fuller Street to be one way too, to continue the ways, because I get about 100 people a day doing a U-turn in my driveway. But just for your information, it's only
Thank you.
that one block that is two ways.
Thank you.
You're
You should put up a toll, Fran. You'll make some money.
I've been cursed at and screamed at and had somebody drive within an inch of me standing in my driveway because I wouldn't move to let them turn around.
Don't you love people?
I do. So
good for you. Okay, so Janet, we are taking that under advisement. And Jeffrey, can you let's see, you've already done your study and it's been peer reviewed. You're going to do your counts. Can you see how many people do 3-point turns?
Brian, can I make one comment?
Okay.
It's that all of the prior studies that were done on this property somehow failed to include our house at 64 Coolidge Street, which is a direct abutter, and somehow their massing study didn't include us. Their prior nothing included us. So I just want to highlight that everything needs to include all the abutters and that we should not be forgotten.
Okay, gotcha, Janet.
So I think, Mr. Chairman, just in terms of looking at the numbers, we did our traffic counts, we're really counting those peak hours or peak periods, so 7 to 9, 4 to 6, or 3 to 6 in the afternoon.
Sure.
I suspect, and Fran can, opine as well on this. I think that peak parking issue is not occurring during those when people are driving to or from work. It's happening outside of that because your peak parking is probably after 10, Fran, something like that. So that you're probably seeing more activity of those U-turns. So they're not in our numbers in terms of those peak time periods. There's very little traffic between 7 and 9 and 3 to 6. So we're not capturing the U-turns. The numbers are small using those roadways. But I think off peak hours is probably larger amount of people looking for parking.
Well, I guess the hope with the loading zone is also that some of the stress will be taken away from Coolidge Street.
Yeah, and that's the other part of that in terms of Uber, Lyft. As you probably know, when you put the address in, that's why it's very important. And I think Janet mentioned this, it's 429 Harvard. That's the physical address. So when you enter that in for Uber or Lyft, they're coming to Harvard Street and looking for a space along the front of the building. They're not going to Coolidge because that's where they're going to be directed through their app.
Okay. Thank you. Fran, I see your hand is up. Do you have another question?
I do, if you would permit that. Regarding the loading zones, as I say, I apologize for missing the first few minutes. I'm not sure what kind of commercial you're going to put in. And I think I read that they would be time limited to the morning. But it sounds like if you're talking about Uber and Lyft and Amazon and, healthcare deposit, CVS for some of the elderly, that it might be all day. And I wondered, Brian, if there was a discussion or a notice given to the merchants on Harvard Street, because I think they would be very disappointed if they lost a couple of Harvard Street parking spaces, because you have the butchery has 1 million people going there. You have Tate that has 2 million people going there. And you have all these shops that have a huge number of people going in and out, and anything that takes away the parking spots probably drives them crazy. So I wondered if they were notified. And to answer Jeffrey's question, we get the majority of people, you know, on Fuller Street and in Coolidge, starting at 8 in the morning, where people are going to the butchery or Tate or whatever, and throughout the whole afternoon, and not just at these rush hours. And even in the evening, you know, people going and getting ice cream and parking on the wrong side of the street. So we have it all day. But my question is, have the other merchants on Harvard Street been made aware of the possibility of losing a couple of parking spaces for a loading dock? And is it correct that it's just going to be a morning loading dock?
So it is, right now, the plan is to have it time limited, so there would not be a loss of parking on Harvard Street when parking is needed most on Harvard Street. I think that's fair to say. In terms of notification of all of the merchants, I do not know the answer. Dan or Rob, do you have a sense? I think we do residents. We're required to do residents, I believe.
If I
Jonathan,
may,
go ahead, please.
I believe we would not have noticed, as this is usurped from us by the zoning board.
That's right.
Right, but the notice of the zoning hearing and the project itself went to all the abutters, commercial or residential.
Thank you, Jennifer.
It's
good to have a former town
The
council.
loading wouldn't the loading be for any vehicle that wants to deliver, whether it's to 429 or the other businesses?
Yes.
So
yes.
it would have multiple purpose, so I think we got it
would.
covered. Yeah.
Okay, I am going to bring up something for my colleagues on the board to discuss. And it has to do with the curb extensions. I don't love the curb extensions because I think it's going to make our job harder in the future to improve bike accommodations on Harvard Street. And since this can't get built until 2031 at the minimum, I got a feeling that between now and 2031, we're going to have some new designs for Harvard Street. So, you know, I'm just going to go out and say that I'm not a fan of the continuous curb extension. I don't know what the answer is, but that's something I want to talk about with my colleagues. Janet, I'll get to you. We're just going to have a little internal talk, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, Jonathan.
I thought I heard said that there would be an in lieu payment for the cost of those, and I would accept that in general at this point, given that it's very possible that we might build something else.
Jennifer, did I mishear then? Is it a cash payment or is it?
He's right, Jonathan.
Okay. He's always right, that pesky Jonathan. Okay, so then never mind. Wendy, go ahead.
Would we need to change the language? Or I can't remember, is it that the town decides whether they get the payment, or?
No, it's
not just based on whether it's the timing. It's not just
Yeah, if I could just very briefly, it was basically the way that when you read kind of what the recommendation was, it was either or at the discretion of the town. And what the clear thing was is that there cannot be any cutting of the pavement after the town's project. So I think what the transportation director was suggesting was that to the extent the board was inclined to want this to be built, that if we were to build it, it would need to happen before the moratorium. or payment could be made to the town. So to the chair's point, if you wanted to discuss modifying it to say, just give us the money and we'll figure out if and when we want to do this and what form it might take. I think we were fine with either approach.
All right, so Rob, can you put up the list of mitigations, specifically number 8? Because I think the language is a little confusing.
Yeah, I think so too. So if we want to have the option and not have it be based on the date, then I think.
Because I think right now it's a if or, and it seems like it's the language seems.
Well, we already just paved over that part of Harvard Street, so the moratorium's in effect until 31.
Exactly.
Right, but if they finish after 31, then it doesn't necessarily come to the town to decide, right? Then
Rob, do you have that? Do you have the language?
It was in the presentation that Jeffrey gave. I don't have it immediately available.
All right. Well,
Let me see if I can find the
Let me
letter.
share my screen. I have it right here. Or Jeffrey can bring it up. Or I can read the language.
So I think I found it, Mr. Chairman. I'll bring that up now.
Thank you.
There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's number 8 on the second page. So 8A, yeah. So that shall is sort of doing a lot of work in this sentence, and that's what's confusing to me. So.
yeah, so it seems like if we could change the language to
Fund.
that
cost of-
that the town gets to determine whether it's a build or fund.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Janet, let's hear from you again.
Hi, I'm actually in the driveway now. I wanted to make a clarification, Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
That the proposed parking spot that would become a no parking spot if possible, that it'd be a no stopping spot, because my concern is it would, even making it no parking, that the delivery trucks and Uber and Lyft, even if the Harvard Street address becomes the address for the building, they are still going to come around. They're still going to double park, and I'm going to still be stuck not able to get out of my driveway with no remedy.
Okay.
So that is a clarification I would like to request.
Thank you. So since that's not on the agenda tonight, we can't do anything about that. And the agenda item we're discussing is a letter to the ZBA, which doesn't have the authority to do what you're requesting. It has to kind of, I'm sorry to be bureaucratic, but it has to come back through the process of the transportation board. And at that point, staff will go out and measure and do all the stuff, and we'll make a recommendation to us as to what type of no stopping, no standing, no parking zone is requested, and we can take action on that. But honestly, I think it's too soon to do that. They haven't even torn down the other building yet. So yes, I think
Could you clarify what's tomorrow? Then the traffic study that's going to happen tomorrow?
They're going to have people out counting cars tomorrow.
I see.
And Tuesday, I think. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, public, anybody? I don't see any hands shooting up. Okay, so yeah, I'd like to get that language on 8A changed. I don't know if anybody has a brilliant suggestion or anything. Or we can leave it, Rob, I think you understand what we're saying. Just get the word shall out of there and we'll take the money.
Sounds good.
Okay, so with that caveat, is there a motion to approve? Let's see, where's my language? So the request is to authorize me to send a letter to the ZBA outlining the provisions in the memo from Rob Guptill to us dated June 17th, 2026, as the sort of official correspondence from the Transportation Board to the ZBA with respect to the 429 Harvard Street zoning permit request. I think I got that right. Jennifer, does that sound about right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so with that caveat and with what I just said, is there an authorization for me to send a letter? Oh, there's the language. Thank you. Does anybody like to make a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Richard,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes. Thank you. That is unanimous.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
luck with
Chairman.
your projects. We look forward to the more housing.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Now tonight's main event. Discussion. I'm just pulling it up here so I say the right language. 5C. Presentation and discussion on short stroke long-term plans for Harvard Street. Speak of the devil. Take it away.
All right, so yes, we were just talking about a project on Harvard Street, but in light of the conversations that we've been having, we want to come back tonight to summarize the changes to the pavement marking plans that the board directed DPW to institute, and then share with you some of the initial thoughts that have been given through our designer on a parking protected bike lane, and then just reiterate with everyone what's in the Vision Zero program for Harvard Street for the long-term kind of approach. So in terms of these short-term treatments, specifically the pavement marking plan, the changes that were directed by the Transportation Board during the April 29th meeting were to reduce the standard travel lane from lane width from 11 feet to 10.5 feet. And that available half foot in each direction, that available width was generally used to increase the bike lane widths. And the other direction was to better indicate bus stops. And we contacted the MBTA and they indicated that their preference was the bus box treatment. So we went with that. So as you can kind of see here in this snip of the pavement marking plans, in one part of it, we now have the 10.5 foot lane width, and the bus box treatment is shown here with the bus box that's about a 7 foot width from the curb, distance from the curb, with the bike lane that is adjacent to that bus stop indicated with dashed lines to indicate the potential conflict zone. Longer term treatments that are mentioned in the Vision Zero program include, specifically for Harvard Street, curb extensions and daylighting. And I will just note that we did address daylighting at specific locations under the PMPP. Left turn hardening. We'll note that that was also indicated at Green Street to make that left turn more difficult. So that was addressed as part of the pavement marking program. RRFBs. As you all know, we have installed several RRFBs along the Harvard Street corridor. They are currently just starting their lifespan. And upgraded bike lane crossings and or separation. And I think, we certainly tried as part of the pavement marking plans to improve bike lanes wherever possible. We were not able to achieve parking protected bike lanes, but I think that's something that this board has indicated some interest in looking at. And with that, I wanted to share with you two designs or two slides that our designer, Apex, shared with us on how you could potentially incorporate parking protected bike lanes in 2 blocks of Harvard Street. So this first one is between Stedman Street and Babcock Street. You can see here that going from Babcock to Stedman, you have the bike lane that starts out, as far as they've designed it, not parking protected, but then moves to be parking protected as it gets further down the block. But then as it gets further down the block, you see that parking protected bike lane, the bike lane itself vanishes. And this is what happens in the current plan as well. And that's because we have this curb extension here, and we have the left turn lane for opposite Stedman Street. So that's one of the complications that I think we've talked about before, and that we certainly can talk about again tonight, that if we were to do parking protected bike lanes, we would have to address the curb extensions like the ones that we talked about for Coolidge Street, the curb extensions and or the turn lanes. I think it is interesting to note that in the southbound direction, while they had the bike lane opposite Stedman Street starting out adjacent to the parking lane, after the bus stop here, they do move it to be parking protected bike lane. And as you can see here, this actually does accommodate a parking protected bike lane here. And there is room to do that and accommodate it as it moves into the intersection. So I think my sort of a judgment on this is that this design would work in the southbound direction, but not in the northbound direction for parking protected bike lanes. And I think this kind of pattern is kind of shown even more clearly in the next block, Babcock Street to Green Street. So again, looking in the northbound direction, going from the protected bike lane south of Green Street, you could immediately get a parking protected bike lane north of Green Street. But I think this is where the issues kind of happen here, where this bike lane would have to come out and join the flow of traffic is precisely where right turning vehicles would be crossing that bike lane. And I think myself and DPW staff feel that is an unsafe situation to put bicyclists in. This also would be limited to a 4-foot bike lane that would be squeezed between 2 10-foot travel lanes. And we felt that was uncomfortable and unsafe for bicyclists. But again, this would not be an issue if, one, that curb extension was not there, or we did not need that right turn lane for Babcock Street. However, looking in the southbound direction, coming from Babcock Street, you do see again that a parking protected bike lane could make it through this entire block here. And I would like to note that in this case, oftentimes you lose parking because of a parking protected bike lane. In this situation here, because you're moving parking towards the street and you don't have to you're moving them away from the curb extensions, you actually gain a parking space headed in this direction, which is just kind of unique, I think, quite honestly, to parking protected bike lanes where generally you're losing parking. But again, you would be able to have this parking protected bike lane going in the southbound direction. And yeah, that's pretty much, I wanted to just give a quick discussion. I know there's going to be plenty of discussion about this, but I'm happy to talk about any and all of it.
We love to talk about Harvard Street, Rob. Jonathan, I see your hand is up, good sir.
Yeah, thank you for this, Sarah. It's certainly a step in the direction I think we all want to see, especially for the central business portion of Harvard Street and Coolidge Corner. couple things, and I think you've heard this from me already offline, but I very much would like to see this go to the committees before we have further comment on this. I'm disappointed that we don't have memos from the Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Mobility Committee. So I certainly hope that these are going to be on their agendas over the next month and that they have an opportunity to send us their memos and we can talk about it in an upcoming meeting. As far as the turn lanes go at Stedman and at Babcock, I assume this is just a sketch from Apex and it's not, has not been analyzed for traffic modifications at any particular intersections. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so there is more to do here, for instance, in that respect.
Yes.
I
I think it's fair to say nothing would be done before 2031 in terms of infrastructure movements, and nothing would be done without several years of public process.
No, we can have a discussion about that at a different time. I think smaller sections of this could be done earlier than 2031.
Well, yes, we can't touch the street, right, till 2031. That's what I'm trying to say.
Private companies and utilities cannot touch the street. The town can touch its property whenever it wants, Brian. They can
Sure. Okay,
repave it.
anyway,
if
go on.
programmed in. The other question I have is in regards, Rob, to what you were talking about with the curb extensions. I would expect that it's some sort of island replacement that goes in rather than a curb extension in the future. And I know that has effects as far as pedestrian curb ramps go along the sidewalk. So that is, I suppose, a possibility. It would be nice to see some examples, not necessarily designs, but maybe some photographic examples from how other communities have accomplished both curb extensions and parking protected bike lanes. If that's possible for a future meeting. And then the last one is more of a question about if we touch parking in this location, does it have to get removed? So all the way, if you go back to the sheet with Stedman in front of it, and it just caught my eye when I was looking at it. There are 2 parking spaces that are in a signalized intersection. Do those have to be removed if we touch them? Like even part of the project that's going on right now? Because I mean, technically, if there's a red light and you're like, how do you pull out?
Yeah.
How are 2 parking spaces in an intersection safe?
This reflects the current how it was previously.
No, I understand, but should those be there?
We can certainly look at that, but yeah, the goal of the PMPP was to replace parking in town.
I understand. Again, I understand, but if there are parking spaces that violate motor vehicle movement and they have no ability to tell where they're going, should they be there?
So Rob,
Let's say
how
I'm
about
let's say I'm a
next?
bicycle. Hold on. Let's say I'm a bicyclist with a green light and I'm traveling through and someone decides to pull out. I'm coming down Stedman, I'm turning. And someone decides to pull out because they can't see a green light or a red light. Who's at fault there? And that's my question.
So Jonathan, I'm suggesting that we let Dan and Rob
Yeah,
look at
that's fine.
this, come back to us next week with an answer.
That is absolutely fine.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, Brian, I just, with the new markings and everything, between Green and Babcock, traveling through Coolidge Corner, I see 4 or 5 cars double parking in that whole thing. And being that we're not going to get to any roadway design anytime soon, is there a way we could advocate with the Brookline Police as far as the traffic division with enforcement? So based on violations for double parking in total, we average less than 200 violations in the course of a year. And if you were ticketing just based on what I observed, I think we could get some more enforcement and bring more safety in the short run. Just looking to see if we can address that in any way with support from the staff on that. Thank you.
Perfect sense to me. Officer Sullivan, I know you're listening, so you're hearing a request for additional enforcement in Coolidge Corner. I know you guys are up there a lot, or your folks are up there a lot, but always need for more, especially between Beacon and Green. Nancy, go ahead, please, ma'am.
Yeah, I just have a question. Maybe it's a process question that I'm hoping will help guide any public discussion. And that is, what exactly are we doing with respect to these longer term solutions? As Jonathan suggests, I don't think we're prepared to have like a fully open discussion of what might, could, should be done here. So I'm just trying, could you give us some guidance in terms of what it is we're doing tonight and what kind of discussion would be productive at this point in time?
Sure. So I should have put this in context at the beginning. I apologize for not. So we did promise the advocacy communities that we would have a discussion about short and long-term solutions for Harvard Street. The short-term piece is really the staff reporting back that the changes that we had requested as a board had been implemented in the project. The longer term things, I'd asked the staff to come up with some longer term solutions, particularly in response to what I think we heard from lots of public comment. What I think we're doing here is trying to tee up the sort of 2031, 2032 CIP request process. And we talked a little bit about this overall process on last Friday, Nancy, and we probably didn't fill you in. So again, that's on me. We're trying to start earlier in the entire sort of timeline with the staff and with all the involved parties to get a sense kind of what we should be looking for in terms of CIP requests to put in to the town administrator and to town meeting. So I think what we're doing is sort of kicking the tires on this to get a sense of the board, is to see if there is support for moving forward in this direction, subject to all of the work that would have to be done. And something like this, as I said in March and April, would take a couple of years. There would have to be a design review committee. This would be a major initiative that would require all sorts of feedback from all sorts of different parties. So I guess what we're looking for from the board tonight is a general sense of directionally, is this sort of where we want to go? And if so, then we can ask the staff to begin estimating the process that it would take in terms of time and in terms of sort of big picture costs. And that's sort of really where we're at right now, is just sort of kicking the proverbial tires on this to see if there is support for it. Hope that helps. Wendy, go ahead, please.
Thanks. So I want to say thanks to the staff for doing this so quickly. I know we've had a lot of back and forth about Harvard and there's been a lot of controversy about it. I guess sort of like Nancy, I am also a little bit confused and I'm a little surprised to hear the 31, 32 timeline because I think I walked away from our retreat with thinking that we were talking about a different timeline. It seemed like this came up a lot in the prioritization, or it was a high priority. So I guess these changes to me, I mean, there's like a plan in front of us, even though we're potentially talking about a much longer process. And I agree with Jonathan that it seems like there are things that could be done more quickly. The things on here, I have issues with some of the things, but it's good to see the sort of like first take. I would read this first take as the things that could be done really quickly without doing a lot of work because like Jonathan mentioned, they haven't done traffic study around the left turn lane. Like it's sort of assuming that nothing changes really other than the paint. And so this seems like the stuff you would do if you're not gonna wait until 31 and do a whole community process. If we are doing that, then it kind of seems a little, then why talk about this now in a way? But so I guess it would be nice to have from staff potential timelines and processes. So I agree with Jonathan that we want these things to go to committees first rather than having them come here and then having committee people sort of show up and spend a lot of time talking about it when it could have happened beforehand. So I guess I would like to talk more about a process. Like, can we have staff come and say we're, thinking about changes we could do within the next couple of years, and we're going to put something together and bring it to committee and come to you, and this is the timeline for that, or we're not thinking about things in the next couple of years. We're only thinking about a long-term CIP thing, in which case, here's the timeline that we're proposing. Because right now it feels like we're trying to do both. We're like looking at these very quickly without it being vetted by the committees first. And it's changes that aren't involving a lot of kind of larger potential, rethinking the design. It seems like these are quick build changes, but we're also saying that we're not doing quick build changes. So I'm finding the process a little confusing.
Okay, Rob Guptill, tell me what you think where we should be talking about tonight, because maybe I got it wrong.
Well, I agree, Brian. I think we were trying to respond to what the Transportation Board asked us to do, which was present short-term and long-term solutions. But I understand, Wendy and Nancy, what you're saying in terms of the confusion. So I think certainly we as staff can take the feedback that you've given us, and I certainly I'll take ownership over not going to the committees here. I'm still learning my way here and everything. But I will fully take my ownership over that and take this as a good lesson that as far as this process goes, we can take what you were recommending, which is go back to the drawing board, think about which changes we as staff would want to do, share that with the committees, get their opinions on it, have a feedback with them, and once we've all reached a conclusion, we can take that back to the board.
I think you'd want to put some time bands on any projects as well.
Yeah, certainly, as part of what we're doing when we talk to the committees, we would want to be clear about what types of changes, what sort of timeline would be associated with them.
And always loop in the Disability Commission on these things. I'd like to get their feedback as well. Wendy, is your hand up from before, or is that?
No, I have another, I guess I have a follow-up, which is, I mean, I think it's great. I'm happy to see long-term stuff. And I think if it really is long-term, then yes, going back to committee, but also looking again at the plan and saying, you know, are there things that we want to study in this long-term to be able to think, you know, beyond kind of how the space is right now? Because I can already anticipate lots of you know, issues with this that is going to come up in the committees. So, I mean, you could go and talk to them now, but since, you know, since it is, if you're saying it's long-term, like, let's think about what is feasible with more time, in terms of doing some of those, you know, studies of the left turns and all of that.
Yeah, and just so while we're talking about this, Rob, just note down that I'd like to see wider sidewalks in Coolidge Corner in general, specifically by the Booksmith. I don't know what that means for other movements of other modes, but I think Coolidge Corner needs wider sidewalks. Len, I see your hand, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say something along those lines of wider sidewalks, and perhaps the sidewalk could include the protected bike lane like we've done on Washington Street.
So, Rob, I think what you're hearing is come back to us, drop a little bit more detailed plans, not super detailed, but just with time bands. Share it with the 3 committees, possibly 4 committees as of next week, and then come back to us sometime this summer, and we'll hash that out. Does that seem reasonable to everyone? We're still going to hear from the public on this, but does that seem reasonable to folks? Okay. If you would like to comment on this item, you can use the raise hand function, and we would be delighted to hear from you. Fran Perler, I see your hand is up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Brian. So I like to look at compromises for problems that makes everyone happy. And here you have pedestrians, bicyclists, merchants, and autos. This is an area that has 3 very large senior housing complexes, and it has a fire station right off of Harvard Street. And I worry that with the little tiny lanes and going here and there, it's going to be unsafe for some of those people. So I have proposed in the past a really crazy idea, which I hope you don't throw away right away. And that is, instead of having bicycle lanes on Harvard Street, 1 block over from Fuller Street down to Harvard Street on Center Street, there's a parallel street to Harvard that goes from Fuller across Beacon in front of the Marriott to Harvard. If we made that one way and we made Winchester one way, we can have a bike lane as big as you wanted. You could have it protected. It has the same grade. It's not higher or lower. It would be safer for the bicyclists. And then on Harvard Street, you could eliminate the bike lanes, include the parking that's there, which makes the mobility limited and the delivery stores happy. And Brian, you can make the sidewalks bigger, because you're spreading the need for, instead of trying to get a really nice bike lane on a really small street, you're moving it over 1 block and letting it be as big as you want and as safe as you want. And I hope that this is an idea that for the long term, somebody actually looks at, because this is my neighborhood. I know these streets. It's very doable, and I think it would make all the groups happy in that bigger sidewalks. You don't have to have tiny lanes that the fire trucks have a hard time going through, or You know, on Winchester Street in front of the senior center, when the bus parks, it's on the curb, but it's 1.5 feet into the lane of traffic because it's too big. And you can make it safer and happier for the bike people. So I would hope if, when you're looking at long-term plans, you might consider looking at this as an alternative idea just for this area, because this is Coolidge Corner. It's special, it's our commercial district. We don't want to do anything that will hurt our businesses. We want bigger sidewalks. We want it to be pedestrian friendly for those who can walk. We want to have parking spaces for those who can't walk so far. And I think it's something to consider in the long term, and I hope you might think about it. That's
Thank
my
you very
2
much.
cents.
Thank you, Fran. David, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. My name is David Krupp. I'm the president, of course, of Biking Brookline. I would say as this discussion has been going on for the last few months, I've tried to focus a little more on how each parking protected bike lane I'm riding in has been designed. And I think it's important to note there are parking protected bike lanes all over the Boston metropolitan area. They've been there for years. I'm not aware of any that's been removed, so they all seem to be successful. I see them in busy commercial areas. I see them in residential areas. I see them where space is somewhat constrained. I see them where there is a lot of space. I see them where there are bulb outs. I see them where there aren't bulb outs. I see them where there's outdoor dining. I see them where there isn't outdoor dining. I think we deserve an explanation as to why we think that parking protected bike lanes are somehow so much more complicated here on this 1 block or 2 blocks of Brookline than they are in every other community surrounding us. And I think it's really important to understand Vision Zero as a policy is basically saying the status quo is not okay. And it's also saying safety is paramount. And it's also saying time is important. And plans that are going to take 10 years aren't good. That's why there's a deadline in Vision Zero. And at the meeting in which this was discussed, I think it was Jonathan Capa specifically said when he said he wanted the Transportation Division to come back to us. I don't have to say, I think I have the transcript in front of me. He said, I quote, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now. And if it has to take 5 years, okay, maybe that would be fine. But I cannot even begin to understand why this is so complicated that it should take 5 years or 3 years. And I think, by the way, that one of the reasons why you see all these different configurations around the Boston area, as I indicated, with the bulb outs, without the bulb outs, it's because it's a quick build thing. They worked with what they had. They didn't try to rebuild the road. And they said, well, if we're going to do it where there's a bulb out, this is how we do it. Or if we're doing it on a street that has to have accessible parking, this is how we do it. They didn't try to do it perfectly. And the whole point of Vision Zero is you make the improvements that will increase safety. And I find the idea that somehow or other the status quo, it feels like the status quo is coming into every kind of issue in Brookline, is if it gets like a free 100 points before we even start talking. We know that what we're trying to get to is better than what we have now. So we should not be creating artificial, it's going to take 3 years. We can't do it without changing the road. We have to figure out how it can be done with the road the way it is, without moving curbs, incorporating the infrastructure that we have now in the same way that, Cambridge did it on Hampshire. And I mean, the number of parking protected bike lanes, I could probably come up with a list of 30 in the Boston area. It can't be that different here. So what I would say is let's look at the next step should be, let's look at parking protected bike lanes, see how they've been implemented in other places in the Boston area, get feedback from them, and then let's talk about how long it should take. And so I would say, I guess my main point is I think we should do this on a much more accelerated timetable than waiting until 2031. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess I might have misspoke earlier when I said 2031. We can't open up the street, although I guess we can, but we don't have to wait that long. We do have a CIP cycle that is on a 5-year basis. There are already projects that are programmed. I take your point, David. You're not wrong on anything you said. There is a process we have to go through. We have not noticed this to any of the abutters that we're even considering doing this. So we do have some process to go through, because if we don't go through that process, we will get nailed on those technicalities, and that will set anything we want to do back even further.
Could I just
Yeah,
make
please. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, of course, I believe in the process, but it's just a question of how long. And I think that when you have a very tested road configuration, it would seem to me 2 perhaps public meetings should be sufficient. I don't see what issues are going to come up that are of a level of complexity that it should ever take more than a few meetings. And I also think that we just see the pattern where when the process is long, it's kind of an example of all work expands to the time allotted for it, where we just hear the same public comments, meeting after meeting from the same people. And eventually you have to make a decision. Are we going to go with this plan, which seems to have broader support, or are we not going to do it because there are pockets of opposition? And I think if you did a 1-year process here, you'd find there's broad public support. There will be pockets of opposition, but we, are a democracy, and we should go with, what the broader community sentiment is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melanie Brunt, go ahead, please.
Hi, I lived in a Brookline resident, precinct 15, and I'm a frequent cyclist. So I'm here because the advisory committee suggested that folks who are connected to the advisory committee attend. But I completely support what David Krupp said, that it looks like, based on the drawings, that the drawings that were shown with the parking protected bike lanes could certainly be implemented relatively quickly, it would seem to me, since it's paint, isn't actually rebuilding anything. I will say that my concern with parking protected bike lanes is I'd rather have the bike lane embedded in the sidewalk, because what happens, unless there are bollards, poles, or some kind of concrete separation between the bike lane and the parking spots, cars inevitably park in the bike lane, or, double park in the bike lane, and I don't think it's an ideal configuration. But I'd also like to say that I thought it's definitely worth exploring what Fran mentioned of looking at alternative routes on side streets, which would certainly, I know around Inman Square in Cambridge, that's the bike route that I often take to work, and there are several sort of side streets that they've incorporated into their bike routes that I definitely feel much safer on. So I think that's something worth exploring.
Thank you. Andy, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I find it, I rode to Lexington the other day on my bike, and it seems I ride through Cambridge, I ride through Somerville, I ride through Boston, and it seems that where there's a commitment to putting in bike lanes, they get put in. I don't understand. We don't need a long process. If the town transportation department were willing to do what we've done, we have a protected bike lane in the middle of Coolidge Corner from Beacon Street past the Booksmith. I'm not sure how far it goes, and it's wonderful. It's safe. And it seems to me we don't need to wait to redo the streets. We don't need to go through all sorts of planning. What we need is a commitment like Cambridge has, like Somerville has, like Boston has. You know, even Newton, you go, the first light that you see for a bicycle lane with a bicycle on it that allows bicycle traffic to go through is when you leave Brookline on Beacon Street and get to Newton at Hammond Parkway, there's a bike lane and there's a dedicated light control allowing the bikes to pass. We can do that here if we want to. We've done it in the middle of Coolidge Corner. What it takes is not years and years of planning, but a commitment to do it when you want to do it.
Andy, you've been around this town a lot longer than I have, and you've been involved in these things a lot more than I have. Do you really think we can just caveat this and get it done in 2 weeks without any public process?
If that were the
That's
policy
not
of the
how, no,
Transportation
that's not how
Board,
Brookline works.
well, you know, then
If we had a mayor, we could caveat this tomorrow. We have to go through 8,000 different boards and commissions because that's the system that's set up in this town.
well, that's why some people are looking for,
Sure.
a study committee, whether we should be a city, wouldn't be committed to being a city. It would be committed to exploring whether we could work more efficiently with what changes it would take. Becoming a city might be one of them, but it seems to me that we're surrounded.
Oh no, Andy, you froze. And by the way, I don't disagree. And with the greatest will in the world, I would do this tomorrow. But I just know that if we did it tomorrow, we haven't noticed this to all of the right people, including all of the abutters. We haven't brought in the business community. We haven't brought in the disability community. We haven't brought in the car folks, by the way. We haven't brought in the folks that own businesses or people that live near this place, by the way. It is not as simple as just going out and painting a street. If it were, we would do it. These things are complicated because we make them complicated because of the form of government we have. And that's what we have. And I'm trying to work within the system that we have. And maybe I'm too pessimistic. Okay, sorry about that. But if I could snap my fingers and do it, I would. It's just not that simple. Emily, tell me I'm wrong.
So you're wrong, Brian. You're totally wrong.
Thank you.
I do not think it is responsible. The idea that we would do this in 2 weeks, but I don't think there is anybody that is saying that. I think there's a difference between 5 years and shorter public process that matches the scale of changes and the financial outlay that we're talking about here. I'm sure the plans, whatever people come to, they're going to be different than the ones here. To me, these seem like short-term plans for Harvard Street, not long-term plans for Harvard Street. I really hope that the Transportation Board and the Transportation Division has much better long-term plans in their minds for Harvard Street, plans that will make beautiful wide sidewalks, better trees, high quality bike lanes. But I don't think that waiting for those really excellent changes is like consistent with what the town has asked the board to do over and over again, which is prioritize safety. And so I would hope that you guys can do both, pick some quick builds solutions that are going to be very impactful and can be done on a fairly short schedule, and start planning for a tip process, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
So I guess what I'm gonna ask here is we have a successful protected bike lane in St. Mary Street. True? No one's disputing that it's successful. I'm not.
I think it's great.
Okay. So we had a process for that. I know we have forever meeting minutes lying around that probably cover how we went about that. I don't think anyone's going to dispute as well that Beacon Street is just as important of a vehicular and business and residential route as Harvard Street. Whatever we did there, can we just do that again?
Well, I think that's what we're trying to do.
I don't think it was 5 years long.
So again, I'm sorry, the 5-year thing, to move curb extensions, we can't touch it for 5 years, is what I'm suggesting, because we don't have the CIP money to do it unless we can find money
Understood.
from somewhere else.
Understood.
So that's where that constraint comes in.
And maybe, like Rob was saying, maybe northbound doesn't quite make sense with how it's currently laid out by Apex. But like Rob said as well, southbound looks kind of good. So
Okay, so is there a desire then to ask staff to advance the southbound design in
I
3
mean,
to
I'd like
6
to,
months?
I mean, I'd like to see them take everything to committee first, get feedback for northbound, see if there's something that maybe the advisor group see that we're missing based on their use of the roadway. If not, then yes, something, maybe not 3 to 6 months, Brian, but maybe 6 to 12 or something like that.
Okay.
There's a bidding process associated with that, I would imagine too. So
Wendy.
Yeah, I like Jonathan's idea. If I remember correctly, St. Mary's has managed to go around curb extensions. I'm pretty sure they are there. And the bike lane goes in and out of the road. So I'll say I was really confused by this initial plan. I didn't really understand, other than one right turn lane maybe that they were trying to keep bikes out of sort of merging into. I didn't understand the switching back and forth. I didn't get why it was necessary to like have mid-block switches. So I would love either kind of an explanation of that or a reconsideration of that. And like Jonathan said, I think that reconsideration can happen in conversation with the committees who are really focused on the safety around different users. I also just want to say that we, which we've talked about before, we've been very successful piloting things first. It's not like we have to make fast decisions that are permanent. We can also try things out. So we can do the southbound, first, or do a 1-block change on the northbound and as a pilot, and then see how it goes and see what the business community thinks about it, to see what the abutters think about it. Like, we can try things and let people actually experience them and get feedback from them without saying we're doing this whole process to come up with our final plan. And I think that we should not forget that that's an option. And again, we did that with the posts in front of the Booksmith. We did it in front of UPS. We did it on Lee and Clyde. We did it on Kennard Street. I think we did it on Beacon going up the hill towards Washington Square, and that was eventually turned into a permanent design. But things can be tried, and and then changed if they depending on how they work. So I just want to encourage that.
Thank you. Richard, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Brian. Great call out with the pilot, Wendy, on that. Definitely makes sense as far as having a sample, just like trying a new meal in a restaurant, right? So I think my understanding was that when we were going to review, Harvard Street as a whole. I think the immediate ask came in and it was concentrated in this portion of Harvard Street, Babcock Central, we'll call it. But are we tasked with looking at Vision Zero aspects with parking protected bike lanes and other options that deemed necessary or needed up and down the whole corridor of Harvard Street?
Well, I think we've tasked ourselves with that to a certain extent, yes.
Yeah. Because I think just initially the ask was just trying to work with what we had for a short window, trying to have some success. But I think if we can take the idea like Wendy just called out, as far as a pilot, something immediately that people can kind of sample and get feedback off that would be a great starting point as far as working on something in the short run, and with the idea of reviewing the whole corridor as far as what changes we may want to consider. That's all. Thank you.
Well, that's good advice. We could also task our advisory groups with recommending pilots and all that good stuff. So, Greg, I see you. Let me just get the board members first, then I'll come back to you. Nancy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, since we're talking long-term and we don't want to necessarily be bound by the status quo, is there a way to consider the alternative of taking the bike lanes off Harvard Street and putting them on a parallel street? I mean, that seems like an idea worth exploring, since, Harvard Street, it's just limited in terms of its ability to accommodate all of the different users, given the density and the retail. I mean, those sidewalks are jammed. They're just jammed. You can barely, get through. So I hope that staff can take a look at that and at least maybe make a preliminary determination. Is this a crazy idea or is it something that's potentially feasible? And if it's not a crazy idea and it is potentially feasible, bring that to the advisory groups and let them take a look at it as well. I think that might be a good solution. I have no idea whether it's workable or not, but I think I would like to see somebody take a serious look at it.
It's also something that we could pilot. So, yes. Jonathan, then Wendy, then we'll go back to Greg.
Yeah, I mean, since we're talking about pilots, to your point earlier, Brian, these things, they do cost money and staff time as well. So, I mean, we can't propose infinite pilots. Not that I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but we have to pick a direction to go in to some degree. And if the first step of that is a pilot, fine, but the pilots aren't really necessarily meant to just try stuff. At least that's my opinion.
Okay. Wendy, then we'll go to Greg Wheeler.
Well, I'll just acknowledge, Jonathan. I mean, I get that. I think you're right. And they should be things that we really think have a possibility, and it's a first step towards it. I just want to address Nancy's comment, which is, I think it's an interesting thing to look at. I also want to point out that cyclists aren't necessarily passing through Harvard, they're going to businesses there. So that means, and there's a lot of one-way streets. So to get people there, since there will be no bike lane for them to come back down, it probably means a lot of counterflow, bike lanes in the one-way streets, like everything needs to be looked at to make sure that the cyclists can get to every part of Harvard Street. So it is doable, but I think it's bigger than just having the parallel streets be, have lanes. There's going to have to be access points and we're going to have to get around one ways. And so I think there's a lot of things in there. And just to remind us what has happened when even on residential streets like Babcock, there have been attempts to put bike lanes in. The people on those streets also have a lot of issues with that. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at, and it's not going to be an easy process either.
Yeah, Wendy, I think we had talked about that at one point when we were talking about the senior center and Winchester and Center Street, and potentially one-waying a block or two of that. I'm guessing it didn't work out, and that's why we never heard about it from staff again.
Yeah, like even getting to Center Street, I was trying to think coming across, because I think Webster is across, right? And it's one way. So anyway, I mean, I think it's like you really have to look at the whole system and network there to make that work.
Thanks, Wendy. Greg Wheeler, go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Greg Wheeler. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 3. One thing I just want to add to this discussion, and it's more of a comment than a question, but for something to consider, is a lot's been said about what the process is or what the process needs to be for these types of quick build solutions that improve safety on critical streets. And I know Harvard Street's the biggest current one that's going on, and we're spending a lot of time on it, as we should. And I would like to think that there's some quicker things we can do. I do just want to raise, and I'm concerned that we don't have a clear understanding of what this process should look like. And the reason that concerns me is over the next 5 years, as you know, we have the planned paving schedule. I think next year there's a number of, I'll just flag High Street and Brookline Avenue and Chestnut Hill Avenue. Fiscal 28, there's 3 Tier 1 Vision Zero streets that are planned for repaving, including Cypress, Longwood Avenue, and at least the northern portion of St. Paul Street. I know we're not talking about those streets right now, but the concern is we're spending all this time still not making progress on what's going to happen in Harvard Street either this year or in 5 years, and kind of debating that. Meanwhile, we've got an unending stream of similar type of streets coming up. So I just want to add that it would be really helpful at some point, I think, for the bicycling community, but for the broader community more broadly, if we all knew kind of what to expect, and then we can feel a little bit more comfortable with and have a common understanding of what we should expect from a process. So thank you.
Thank you. Andy, you're back and you're not frozen.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, if we're thinking outside the box of creative ideas, why don't we get a poll of the merchants as to whether, because I've had extensive, well, I don't know if extensive, but conversations with owners of the Booksmith and the manager of the Coolidge Corner Cinema, which are the 2 anchor businesses in Coolidge Corner, and they both say that you can't get more cars into Coolidge Corner, but they both have a lot of customers that bicycle, and making it easier to bicycle would be good for their businesses. I don't know if that's true of other businesses, but I suspect it would be. Maybe that's something that could be done easily.
Good idea. Thank you. Len.
Sorry. Short term, I like the idea of the advisory committees reviewing the design and making recommendations. For a process, I'm going to review what we did for St. Mary's, like Jonathan had mentioned, and make some recommendations based on what we did there. For long term, I like the idea of how we're opening up the scope to not just considering a single street, like considering Center and Fuller and others, but I think let's open up the scope even more and consider things like housing, transportation, parking. Like, none of these things should be done in complete isolation.
Thank you, Lynn. Fran, you're back.
Hi, so I'm a member of the Council on Aging, also amongst other things. And the one way for a block or two on Winchester and Center was in regard to the senior center bus parking and client parking. So the second point is that bicyclists are a lot better physical shape than a lot of the people who live in the Coolidge Corner area, the seniors, the disabled. And it would be nice if you, besides the Disability Commission, if you add the Age-Friendly Cities Commission to your report. And because bicyclists are really healthy, and you talk about the going from Center Street to Harvard and the side streets, etc. Most people are going to park in the Center Street parking lot, and the entrance is on Center Street. So for all the bicyclists, I don't think they want to hold their bicycle and ride it onto, you know, pick up a slice of pizza. They're going to want to park it at the Center Street parking lot. So maybe the cross streets are something to worry about, but, you know, a comprehensive plan, but may not be as essential because of the location of the Center Street parking lot. And one of the things I wanted to remind people is I've lived 300 feet from Harvard Street for 40 years. And 40 years ago, it was a four-way, you know, 2 lanes of traffic going north and 2 lanes of traffic going south. And they already reduced that to 1 lane in each direction to expand the sidewalks. And my issue is that as we try to skinny the roads for all these other things, that we make it more difficult and more dangerous for everyone, because if people in cars aren't safe and don't have a lot of room, if a bicyclist is falling over, a car can't pull over anywhere because the lane is too small and there's traffic coming in. So, you know, we have to think about how wide our streets are and what we want to use for it. And that's why I suggested, you know, having Center Street from Harvard Street past the Marriott and it dead ends into Fuller be 1 way, and then have Winchester going the other way to help that traffic, to allow more space for everybody. Anyway, that's it.
Well, thanks, Fran. I mean, so all of the research in the last 30 years has very clearly proven one thing, and it's that narrower lanes slow down traffic and make it safer for everyone, including other car drivers. So, due respect, I just disagree with you that making the roads wider would somehow make them safer. We don't plan our roads for the random bicyclist falling over in the middle of the street. We plan it for, you know, the vast majority of users. And we try to make it safe for everybody. And that's sort of one of the things we're trying to do here, is figure out, we have so much width and so much length, and how can we divvy it up in an equitable way that makes it safer for everybody? And that's really what we're trying to do.
No, I respect that. And, you know, we have disagreeing opinions on it. My compatriots call it road rage inducing instead of street calming. And they also worry about the ability to drive, you know, as you get a little less competent in such a narrow lane. And so there are pros and cons, but some of these other streets where they've allowed to have these other improvements, you know, Beacon Street is wider. There were 2 lanes in each direction, and they, you know, take a lane and make room. The problem, what the point I was trying to make was Harvard Street is already narrow, and it seems like it will be difficult to make it safe and comfortable for everybody given the limited size. But I know your point, I know the statistics, and I just, you know how my peer group and friends think about driving on it, because this is my neighborhood and we do it every day.
Thank you. David, go ahead, please.
Hi, I just wanted to briefly address this point about using Center and Winchester as alternatives. I strongly support trying to find alternatives when you can, but there are certain cases, and I think this is one of them, where it just isn't practical. And, you know, a simple way to assess that is just count how many people are biking on Harvard Street now in its current very high stress condition for bicyclists. You know, even now, Winchester and Center is clearly much less stressful roads, but people tend not to use them. And it's simply because they're not going to where they're going, and it's not along the route of where they're going. I mean, the reason why Harvard Street is busy with bicyclists is because you've got people who work in the LMA, they ride up Longwood, they turn right, then they start riding north. Many of them live in Cambridge or Alston. They're not going to ride 2 blocks out of their way on what, by the way, is a high stress route to begin with. In other words, they're going to ride on Beacon Street where there is no bike path. They're going to go all the ways over to, I guess it would just be Center. Sure, Center is better, but they have to get to Center. It's out of their way. Then they have to get back from Center to Harvard. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's great to consider alternatives, but this one, I really don't think, once you just look at it very quickly, I think it will be found that it really is not practical.
All right, so I don't want this to devolve into a debate about Center and Fuller. We do, thank you, David, thank you. And thank you, Fran. They're both good ideas, but we're not gonna spend a lot more time on that particular subject. We do have this item in front of us, which we do have to kind of land this plane at some point. So, Jan, I'd like to hear from you, and then we're going to come back to the board and see if we can get to some kind of a consensus.
Okay,
And
sorry. I thought
there you are.
can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Oh, I thought you took my comment off the table. So I'll just be very brief to say that we also have to remember, similar to what David Krupp was saying, you know, people are going to use Harvard Street. They're going to bike down Harvard Street. It's the most direct way to go. They're not going to be taken off at different angles and have to jog back and forth to get where they want to go. I also want you to remember that there's a lot of small 50cc, like what, I don't know if you call them mopeds, that are going right down Harvard Street. And I have mixed feelings about them, but they need protection too. And they're going to be using the bike lanes. So I would say that we really do want to think about the bike lanes staying on Harvard Street. And I want to also say that my dad rode a bike every single day of his life until he was 88, at which point memory problems caused motor issues and he had to give up the bike. So, and I see a lot of people in their 70s and 80s on our streets on bicycles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to come back to the board. So we talked about, where are my notes here? Referring this drawing to the 3 or 4 advisory committees with a charge to report back to us in July, August, September. You guys can help me pick. And also perhaps identifying one or two quick build pilots that we can try. And I guess I would just add, if they are pilots, they need to also have end dates. They need to have things that we're trying to measure, and they have to sort of have, the before and the after. So throwing all that out there, does anybody want to make an attempt to try to put all this into some kind of a paragraph or a process or something?
Just for turnaround time, Brian, I think given that we're heading into the summer, September seems fun
Okay.
to
So
have
we're-
it come back our way again.
I think that makes sense because we're probably not going to meet in August. So Len, Nancy, Wendy, Richard, I guess, are you comfortable with referring what's been proposed tonight to the 3 or 4 advisory committees? Hold on, David. With a charge to report back to us in September with their comments, with ideas for short-term pilot programs that don't involve moving lots of infrastructure, that also have definitive things we're trying to measure that are well spelled out and clear, including timeframes. And then advice on a broader look at Harvard Street and an outline for a potential approach that wouldn't take forever.
My thought in the pilot and everything, having something by September, what we could execute for a pilot sounds great in the short run. I think long run, as far as the overall plan or proposed changes, is lining up projected CIP money that we think where it could fall, which would kind of give us a deadline as far as the end of when we would actually execute, if we execute some changes. We know that the line painting cost is approximately $300,000, and that number can move up or down depending on what we come back with. But I would just kind of maybe use that as a projected budget for what we would consider for changes. And maybe the changes have to stay within the scope of what the budget is. But I think we need to kind of see where we can land the funding in order to be able to execute a contract. And from those 2 timeframes, work back the public process from that point. So if we can look at a bonding pavement project that can get pushed, if something has to get pushed as far as CIP money, that needs to be discussed. But I think we need to kind of figure out where we can land the plane finally with a plan that we come up with between now and then.
Right. So you're suggesting we ask the 3 advisory committees to do that?
No,
sort
no.
of
The
crosswalking
advisory is
for us?
the advisory is just all we're asking for right now in the short run is a pilot between now and September. What I'm saying is we go to the commissioner regarding funding for such a project, where it's going to fall, so that we can kind of work backwards with the deadlines in order to execute a plan. And then from those 2 timeframes there, we can lay out a public process, ideally well in advance of it.
Okay.
So if we're 2 years away from it, Brian, or we're 3 years away from it as far as the CIP money, contract has to go out like 3-4 months before it. The design has to be done 3 or 4 or 6 months before it as far as the final design. That's one whole year right there.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like the
Just
product
writing things down.
life cycle, you know?
So the time it takes to get from concept to 25, then 75, then.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want to include a public process in that?
It would have to be.
Okay. David Trevette, we haven't heard from you today, sir. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Brian. My quick comment right now is just about the schedule that you just articulated. The Pedestrian Advisory Committee is trying to have first a joint meeting with the Commission on Disability on July 8th at their regular scheduled meeting, followed by a Pedestrian Advisory Committee only meeting. We've been having trouble pulling together a quorum recently because we have a couple of vacancies. We will be meeting in July. We will be meeting in August. We will not be meeting in September because I will not be in the country at that time. And so what that means is for this charge that you are issuing to the advisory committees, I would ask for some kind, if I understand, and maybe I don't understand it, reactions to near-term proposals that staff has presented at this meeting for Harvard Street. But frankly, I heard not all of those being accepted. So I would want something by July 8th that I can talk to my committee members about and then come back to at our August 10th meeting to actually articulate whatever we want to, whatever our response would be. So I understand that we're being asked to both respond to some short-term things as well as identify a couple of pilots that might feed better into long-range plans. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so then please, I will need input from DPW July 8th and August 10th.
Understood. Nancy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about what the charge is to the advisory committees. I mean, there's a limit to what they can do, I think, in that short period of time. I don't know that we want to say to them, come up with a pilot. You know, if pilots are really, you know, like if you really want first to decide the direction you want to go, and then you might want to pilot something. But, you know, I'd rather that they choose on their own what they want to focus on. If they want to focus on trying to identify the critical changes that they see necessary in the short term or the long term, if they can see a pilot project and want to propose one, fine. But I wouldn't charge them as if that's the goal, is come up with a pilot. I'd rather that get their input on what they think are good changes and what they think are bad changes, and focus and give them a little bit more leeway as to how they want to focus their time and what they come up with.
Seems fair. Wendy, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I think I agree a bit with Nancy. I mean, I think there was an initial design for Harvard, and the committees themselves were the ones that came back and said, why aren't we considering these other things? They suggested changes. Those changes weren't able to be made during this, you know, repaving process, and this is how we got into all of this. Now there is some not alternatives, but potential long-term that we're trying to make shorter-term proposals on the table. And so I think that going to the committees with this latest plan that we looked at tonight, they've already been looking at these plans, right? They've already reviewed the repaving plan and made comments and suggestions around parking protected bike lanes. So this isn't a new conversation with them. And now there's a first iteration of a parking protected bike lane plan. So I think sitting down with them and, getting their input on what they think, is missing from this, what works. Just doing that process that really wasn't done the first time, I think will get us to where we have ideas and understand the concerns with the plan that was presented tonight. And through that, we can see what's feasible to try. Like we've already identified that there's this critical stretch that is the biggest concern, right? Like there's the interest in looking at all of Harvard, but there's real concern about a very, very busy stretch between Babcock and Stedman, I think, or Green, or both. So I think just having them work with the transportation department to see what kind of improvements can potentially be made to the plan that we looked at tonight, which did not have any major reconstruction on it. It was all paint, I believe. And then from there, working with the transportation department to see what's feasible to do as a quick build that we can try out in this area that's already been identified as the priority areas seems like a reasonable way to proceed over the next few months. And I think in terms of thinking about the long term, what happens in the short term is going to in part determine what happens in the long term. So I don't think we can just kind of start working on the long term as though it's a completely separate project. I think we should focus on this first. Maybe we're not even going to end up needing as big a thing as we think we need in the long term if some of these short-term plans work out. So I do agree, we do have to think long term, but I also think that the long term is going to be informed by what we're talking about. So we need to recognize that also.
Okay.
I don't know if I added to
So
help in a way.
can you help me try to put that in the form of some kind of a direction or charge or instructions or advice? Or
I guess, maybe I would say, and I know Jonathan has his hand up also, but maybe in the next 2 cycles of committee meetings that in the next cycle of committee meetings, they look at the current plan that was discussed tonight and make recommendations and discuss what's feasible. And in the next month, the transportation department maybe comes back with some alternatives to them, and together they can bring something to us in the 3rd meeting. I don't know. Does that seem like a reasonable timeline? I don't know. So they're meeting sorry, David, I can't remember what you said. They're meeting August, but not September.
I actually made a mistake in the date of the August meeting, and I forgot that I'm in the process of moving that from August 10th to August 3rd for the simple reason that I'm flying out of the country on August 12th. And it cuts it really tight for a follow-up to that meeting. So basically, July 8th and August 3rd are for the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And I'll be honest, generally speaking, there are many pedestrian issues along Harvard Street, but frankly, the bigger issues are with the Bicycle Advisory Committee and shared mobility.
Mm-hmm.
So
and maybe there could, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so if we don't have as much time as the others, that may be okay.
And maybe there can be a meeting with representatives from the committees together, so it doesn't have to be these separate things and then you're bouncing back and forth between what people say, right? Like maybe we can.
It's the complexity of the OBNL and having joint meetings, and it's it can be messy.
But I don't know. Maybe somebody from the Bicycle Advisory Committee can speak to that. But it seems like 2 meetings with them and back to us seems like something should be able to come forward from that. Does that seem reasonable?
Okay, I hear you. Let's hear what Jonathan has to say, and then we'll try to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Jan, I'm sorry, we're done with the public at this point. We're just gonna keep it amongst ourselves. Emily, I'm sorry. We need to finish this. I'm getting very tired.
In the interest of time, I agree with everything Wendy said and Nancy said. And I agree with Wendy's timeline. I would expect after that September meeting, we would be approving a concept, at which point it would fall into the transportation department's plans to develop it, and from that have some sort of public meeting, and then probably done after that. Perhaps that's a little too rosy.
So we're asking the advisory committees in their next meeting cycle to consider the current plan, react to it, offer comments specifically about what is and isn't feasible. And then the following cycle, consider a series of recommendations to the transportation board. And then the third cycle, the staff will come back to us with a concept for discussion and action to slot into the overall transportation process for further development for possible implementation at a short, not too far in the distance date.
Yeah, whether that be a pilot or permanent, yeah. And we'll determine that at a future date.
Okay.
We want to be
That
conscientious about.
That sounds great.
So yeah, sorry, that's just for the advisory committees, Richard. I also have your request for the commissioner.
Yep, no, I would just, if we're gonna land a pilot, we just want to be conscientious about the fact of when you can paint the road and not paint the road, so. Knowing that, come November, after come November, it starts to get dicey, so if we're gonna try to set a pilot.
Well, I don't think the outcome is necessarily a pilot. It could be a variety of things, but yes, I agree with you. Then we have to deal with construction season and everything else.
I would not expect that this gets implemented until the spring of 27 at the earliest.
Agreed.
All right. And then I would just echo one last thing is, there's been some offerings of alternative drawings for Harvard Street that we include those in the discussions with the committees. Such as, for example, Emily Jacobson made a drawing up, so it'd be something to cross-reference with.
But I think that's the point of the meetings with the committees, right? So they meet with the committee, they get the feedback. I don't know, Brian, if you and I sort of said it the same way, and I thought the second meeting with the committee was bringing back potential drawing changes to the first plan based on what was discussed, and then they come to us so that it goes through the committees twice.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I think we don't have to vote on that. It's not a voting action. I think that's the sense of the board. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, I think we are. So I will take it from here with the staff, and I will follow back up with anybody if I have questions, because I certainly will have questions. I somehow closed my the screen that had my agenda on it. What's next?
New business.
Is there any new business? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Without objection, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Good night.